Hello, welcome to VMC. I'm Dr. M. Today we are going to be doing something new and we are joined by a rabbit expert. Dr. Katie is here today and we are going to go through some of the things that you absolutely need to know if you're considering having a rabbit or if you do already have a rabbit. So join us. You'll learn something today. Dr. Katie and I actually met about 5 years ago at a continuing education conference, and we've been friends ever since. So I am thrilled that they are able to join us today. We are going to start by discussing some husbandry things about rabbits. And I think, Dr. Katie, if you're okay with it, we'll start by tackling the amount of space that rabbits need.
A lot of people presume because rabbits are relatively small animals, and unfortunately you do see in pet stores a lot of rabbits kept in relatively small enclosures,
Makes me so
that they
mad.
don't need a lot of living space, and that's absolutely incorrect. So a lot of people will have like a sleeping and like an enclosed living space that keeps them safe, for example, at night, and then they'll have a bigger exercise space. For example, like we walk dogs, we give cats sometimes like catios and things like that. So this would be the same sort of ideas. Bunnies do need a space to exercise, and some people harness train their rabbits,
which is
and that's
awesome.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's an awesome enrichment for them, but you can also provide exercise space in the form of like a playpen or a room that you have bunny proofed, because they do go after cords a lot. You can use like a room, part of your house that you've cordoned off, X pen or playpen in the house or in your yard if you have it predator and bunny proofed.
Yes.
Because unfortunately bunnies make excellent prey as well. I mean,
and they're also kind of sneaky. They can get through tiny little areas and they'll chew on things and they'll get out. So it can be quite a challenge to bunny proof and predator proof area.
People don't also realize, like, if you're putting a bunny out on grass and you fertilize that grass, it's actually not safe for the bunny. So you do have to sort of be careful about that too. And also, and I know this sounds crazy, but some grass is actually too sweet for bunnies and it will give them really bad GI issues. So you do have to do your research if you're going to put them, like if you're going to give them an exercise space outside where they're not being like directly supervised. Generally, we consider living space acceptable if it's 12 square feet or more, which is a lot bigger than you think. Like they don't necessarily need a top on their living space if it's high enough that they can't jump out of it. And bunnies can jump quite high. So most people choose to have a living space that's like fully enclosed.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, but a lot of the hutches that I've seen in different stores are just way too small.
Tiny.
So pretty where much should you look for something that's an appropriate size?
Anything that you get at a pet store will be too small. Yeah. And again, like I say, you can use dog like X pens or play pens for exercise
that's a great
space,
idea.
Which are great. You can also use those for their living space, depending on how high it is. And some of them even have tops, which is cool. You don't necessarily want to use anything that's fabric because they will chew it and they will escape.
Yeah. So you kind of need like a wire fence of some sort. Yeah.
It probably shouldn't be painted. If it is painted, it needs to be something that's very non-toxic.
Right, because they'll chew that too. They'll
chew that too. They'll chew everything.
Yeah.
A lot of people use like dog crates with the plastic bottoms. Those sometimes are big enough. Generally, we consider the width should be at minimum the sort of length of your rabbit when it's laying out, stretched out as much as it can. And the length of your enclosure, this is where it lives only versus its exercise space, should be at least 3 to 4 hops of distance.
For the overnight sleeping area, and then have a much larger area for them to be out and about in throughout the day.
We generally consider a minimum for exercise space about 32 square feet, which is huge. People don't realize how big that is. So that's about 3 square meters.
So as far as predators go, if we can just touch on that with enclosures a minute before we move on. Of course, I'm thinking about things like birds of prey, but I'm also thinking about cats and dogs.
Cats, dogs, something that people don't think a lot about, any sort of weasel. So like minks, ferrets, anything like that, they are very, very good predators. And they are very fast and very lithe and can fit through tiny spaces. A lot of people, if they're going to have an outdoor space for their bunny, will make it like a shed or something that's completely enclosed. A lot of hutches that you will get from a pet store do have wire bottoms, and that is absolutely inappropriate for a rabbit. So it's too bad because all these things get recommended, and we see them come into practice with things like bumblefoot, which is pododermatitis, which is where the the bottoms of their feet get infections because they don't have pads all along their feet like dogs do.
Right.
So if they're standing on wire 24/7, which I understand is much easier to clean for some people, however, it's not appropriate for a rabbit. Avoid wire bottoms.
So then that leads to kind of another question as far as cleaning these spaces go. Do you have any resources about litter box training? How easy is that to do? How should we be cleaning these closures?
So litter box training is an awesome thing to do with your rabbit. It's A, very enriching, and B, makes your life a lot easier usually.
Which I'm a fan of.
Right?
Yeah.
You do have to understand that litter box training a rabbit is very different than litter box training a cat.
Yes.
Cats have like certain habits that make them very prone to do that behavior without you really having to do much. And rabbits aren't really like that. No. Rabbits litter box training is a little bit harder, like not gonna lie, and sometimes they're not perfect at it, which
that's just part of having a rabbit.
Of a lot of animals, but like, you know, if a cat pees outside the litter box, you're gonna bring it to the vet, or you should be bringing it to the vet.
Yes.
If a bunny pees outside the litter box, it's probably all right. You may want to keep an eye on it, but like that's just unfortunately rabbits. There's a really good video on it.
What I can do is I can link it in the video description for anybody who needs that information. So if you are working on training your rabbit, the link will be in the description for you.
This creator is very good for a lot of reasons, like resources.
I think we will move on to some social needs. I get a lot of questions. Should I have more than one rabbit? Should I have all males, all females, a mix? Am I spaying and neutering them? What sort of social needs do our rabbits have?
Rabbits are absolutely a social species, and so they should not really be kept singly. So you shouldn't have a single rabbit on its own. We also know that certain sexes of rabbits do not sort of gel very well. You're less likely to get a like appropriate bonding between them. So if you have a female and a female together, they're usually pretty good.
Right.
A female and a male together, usually stellar. A male and a male together, even if they're both neutered, can often be a difficult bonding because they're both kind of territorial. Spaying and neutering, there's multiple reasons that we should do this, and it's really important. Rabbits in particular are extremely prone to uterine cancer. So you should be spaying them, and you should be spaying them fairly young. And also rabbits are, and everybody I feel like knows this at this point, incredibly good at making babies.
Very good.
And so we should be spaying and neutering all of our rabbits. Really, we don't need more in the world. There's tons of litters of rabbits all the time without anybody really needing like from responsible breeders to sometimes there's oops litters and stuff like that, but we don't really need to add to that population anymore.
And so before you even add a rabbit to your household, it's going to be very important that you first find a veterinarian in your area that regularly sees rabbits and that would be comfortable doing these sorts of procedures, because not all general practitioners see rabbits and not all of them have a lot of surgery experience with rabbits. And there are, of course, risks with anesthesia, but what Dr. Katie is saying here is that we're weighing the risks of anesthesia and surgery with the risks of not doing that surgery.
Rabbits do have some sort of specialized anesthesia risks / needs that we need to take into account. So if you have a vet in your area that is just like, oh sure, I can do it, but like I've never done a rabbit before, probably unless not. They're willing to do a lot of research on it, wouldn't be my first choice. Female rabbits as young as 5 months can get pregnant. So like this isn't like a wait till a year and a half type situation. No. And even if you have 2 female bunnies, I strongly recommend getting them both spayed, because like I say, the rate of uterine cancer in rabbits is alarmingly high.
So is it as important to consider neutering, or is that if you have a male housed with a female, does it help to neuter in that situation? Or
so I recommend neutering males for a lot of different reasons. They can still get reproductive cancer. It's not as common as uterine cancer, but it's definitely a risk we consider. But I think a lot of people end up neutering their male bunnies for more behavioral reasons, because they can get quite aggressive. They mark, they spray, they can cause a lot of property damage. And again, we talked about bunny proofing, so you should be doing that anyways, but intact males can be really, really hard. Males that are intact are always sort of trying to find a way to mate, and I think it's just frustrating for them. And a lot of times if you neuter them young, they're happy to just have a bunny companion and it's not a big deal. And I know,
so are we talking about the 5-month age for the males as well then?
I think that it's worth doing them around the same age, because with males, it's kind of a different risk. It's the risk that if you develop territorial behaviors and they sort of in the habit of doing those behaviors, even if you then neuter them, if they've been doing those behaviors for a while, sometimes they won't stop after you neuter them. Yeah,
we have a visitor behind you. Do I see a cat? Oh,
her name is Shay, and she's very, very sweet.
Shay is gorgeous. Oh, look at her. Oh goodness. Oh, but today's not
Shay
about
was
cats.
a foster fail.
Oh, she's the sweetest. What sorts of things, we already talked about the size of the space that they need, but within that space, what should we be including?
So we should always be thinking about rabbits as being not just like chewing because they want to, but chewing because they need to. So you need to give them something to chew on.
Yes.
And you can get it, undyed cardboard. There are rabbit chews out there. Some of them are better than others. You kind of have to do your own research on that, because I could not possibly go through all the
every
rabbit
single
chews
one
that exist.
So many.
But generally you want something that is undyed, made of a natural fiber, and is not super hard. So often we talk about like certain types of wood being okay. A lot of chews, my favorite kinds of rabbit chews are actually like woven hay.
Oh, I love that.
So it's like it's harder, like it sticks around for longer because it's sort of woven really tightly, but it's just what they would be using to keep control of their teeth, regardless. So it's kind of nice that way, and
that's really cool.
Ingestible, so that's nice as well.
Since they're a prey species, are we also talking about a lot of different spots to hide in or nap in?
So in rabbits, like, prey species always want a place to hide, should have multiple hides. And I'm not saying like one per bunny, I'm saying like multiple per bunny, because sometimes you will get a bunny who will guard certain hides. And so you want your rabbits to be able to always have a place they can go. So whether that be tunnels, whether that be igloos. Igloos are okay in my opinion. They are made out of plastic, which often sometimes bunnies will chew up, and it can be problematic. So I tend to say, again, go for natural fibers. There are woven hay hides now. Like they've come out with the craziest stuff, and things like I say, like cardboard even. So you can get cardboard boxes, and a lot of people like that because it's a place to chew, it's a place to hide, and once it gets to a point, you just recycle it, throw it out and get a new one. You are just so interested.
What about things like, should we be playing with our rabbits every day? Should we be doing training sessions with our rabbits? Should we, I guess it will depend a bit on the temperament of the individual rabbit to how much they want to be around people. So how do we approach that?
So I think with bunnies, especially if you get them young, getting them used to handling on their terms, not on our terms, is really important. So you want to do things like, you might not be playing with your bunny when you bring it home at first. You might be sitting in the room and just waiting, sitting there reading a book if you want, and just letting your bunny get used to your presence, because again, they're prey species. It takes them a lot longer to trust. If you're talking about things like adopted rabbits, you might have additional barriers in that they may have not been treated super well in the past, unfortunately.
Exactly. We need to be very careful that we're not flooding the rabbit. People that want to have rabbits need to really learn a lot about rabbit behavior.
The best thing you could possibly do for a rabbit is let it come to you, give it time. You were talking about sort of training as well, and as you were saying, bunnies will eventually probably need to be handled. They will need vet care at some point. They probably should be getting regular checkups just like any other animal. But we do talk about being a little more cognizant of their stress level in terms of like throwing them in a kennel and bringing them in, because bunny stress can lead to things that can become like critical conditions, and we don't want that, obviously.
Okay, so as far as diet goes, what should make up the bulk of a rabbit's diet?
So rabbits' teeth are constantly growing. Unlike our dogs and cats, which have two sets of teeth, they have baby teeth, those fall out, and they have adult teeth, and that's it. Rabbits, their teeth don't fall out and they get new ones. If a tooth falls out, it's usually gone, but their teeth will constantly grow from the root. As a result, the bulk of their diet, 90% of their diet, should be a hay of some variety.
Yes.
Usually in adult rabbits, we recommend Timothy hay.
Correct.
We recommend Timothy hay because it's not super high in sugar, and bunnies have very sensitive digestive systems, mostly because of the bacteria that inhabit their cecum. And those bacteria, if they get too much sugar, can make the bunny very, very sick.
What are we going to consider for the remaining 10%?
The remaining 10% should be, in an ideal world, veggies. And certain types of veggies. Some people will feed a portion of pellets. I say that your pellets shouldn't be more than 2 to 3 tablespoons a day. Some people will say a quarter cup per 5 pounds of body weight. In my opinion,
tiny amounts.
Your pellets should pretty much be a treat. Like they're not giving them what they need in terms of chewing, in terms of nutrition. It's just, it's not a very good bunny diet.
We can give them some veggies within their enclosures as some enrichment each day then.
So I would say that veggies, we usually say about a cup. For like a dwarf breed, and maybe 2 cups a day for a giant breed.
They should have hay available all the time.
All the time. Free choice hay, which essentially means as much hay
as
all
they
the
want.
Time as they could eat. So if you're going out to work, you should have enough hay in there that when you come home, they will still have hay.
Exactly. They always need that hay available. And then less than 10% of their diet being rabbit safe vegetables, and then a couple tablespoons of pellets for things like training purposes and husbandry and cooperative care.
Rabbits also get something called or can get something called sort of like sludge in their urine. Normally it's not a huge deal, but we try and keep away from greens that tend to be high in something called oxalic acid. Because it can potentially help create stones, which are not normal and you have to have removed. But things like arugula, carrot tops, not carrots. A lot of people think bunnies should eat carrots. They really almost shouldn't eat carrots at all. Cucumber leaves are great. Kale is great. Red or green lettuces, romaine lettuce. So there's a whole bunch of stuff.
Okay, so now we've kind of covered on the very basics of, if you're considering a rabbit, these are the things that you need to know. So then this leads me to ask, a lot of people think, especially around Easter, it drives me up the wall, let's get a rabbit as a gift. Yeah, I'm sure you do, because I'm sure you see it all the time too. So people are like, you know what? We have kids. Often the kids are like 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. They're like, it's Easter. Let's get them a rabbit as a gift. Should people be doing that? I'm going to stop the video here for this week, and you'll have to tune in next Friday to hear Dr. Katie's answer. And we also go on to discuss a bunch of common medical issues to watch out for, and a bunch of other juicy nuggets of information that you absolutely need to know. Please feel free to comment down below if you have any questions, or if you have another exotic species that you would like to see me talk about with Dr. Katie in the future. Have a great week. We'll see you next Friday. Bye.